Okay, this is now the 27th of March, and I've finished, like I said, the frame ones. Let me go just a second to go get those so you can see what's going on. Well, I should say I finished it, but I haven't really. I put the spall on, and the gussets are on both sides, and I've screwed in this place in here. Now, John Gardner's book doesn't really talk about whether it's even necessary to secure these together, but for stability, I just can't imagine having anything except, so I put on 6 screws on this side and another 6 on that side. I figure that's strong enough, and I might go back and epoxy it, but I just don't have a feeling. I'm going to be screwing up underneath it from the bottom, and that's going to be a pretty stable thing. The gussets, however, have been screwed, and you notice I put plugs in here, but sanding down has gone through the veneer of the plywood, so I'm looking at trying to get some more oak veneer to put on this, just to kind of trim it up a little, make it look better. But during the assembly, John says in his book that when you're setting up something on the board, to assemble the frames, that once you clamp it in place, you shouldn't move it until you've got the spall on there and that everything is ready to go. Well, from a practical point of view, you've got gussets on both sides, here and here. This is frame 2, and the center brace that goes in the middle here. And putting these on, I found my experience in doing frame 1 that it's better if you put these gussets on, just screw them on initially, and do all of the necessary trimming and everything you need to do. And when you're finished with the putting on the gussets, these don't always just line up perfectly the way there's, I mean, you can go ahead and do everything you can to make these gussets exactly match the curves of the wood you've got, but the wood's been basically rough cut so that you can then kind of contour it as best you can to conform with the with a smooth line on the inside. Of course, the knuckles position on the outside is very critical, and that's why it's sitting on the table here, to make sure that my mark on this knuckle is right dead center over the top of the intersections where it's supposed to be here. The trueness of this is just making sure that, number one, that you've got the thicknesses that you need to have at the points that are on John's drawings, and that it comes down and makes a fair curve through here. But like I say, you can't, when you put on, you first put one of these things on, what I did is I took, excuse me again, I'll show you what I'm talking about. This is the other frame 2 here, one of the pieces. I put it on the table. This is a flat side here. I mean, it's, and so is the gusset flat here. So that's easy to true up. What's not easy to true up is this part here. So I've got a drum sander on the Shopsmith over here, that after I get all of this in place and get it screwed on both sides, no glue yet, then I sand it smooth and get it all as true and nice as I can. And then you start putting it together here, join it in the middle here, and then these, this is where I'm putting the screws for the gusset, the brace that holds the 2 sides together. And you'll notice I've only got 4 screws in here because I had it clamped on the outside where the other screws go. And I will now take the, using these, using these countersink taper bits, and it gives a good, there's probably, you know, about 3/16 of an inch countersink down into the oak here. And I've got the plugs over there that I've already made up to go on these. The issue with these things here is that this is plywood, oak plywood, and I couldn't get the grain to match, obviously. So that's why the dark oak kind of shows up here. And maybe that's not such a bad deal, but I'm thinking about, I've got some veneer that I got on eBay over there that I might try out. It's kind of a coarse veneer. It's going to take some sanding before it looks decent. But anyhow, like I said, so you get these two pieces together, then you put it back on the drawing. Make sure that this is a square bottom and a square thing here, so you're always checking to make sure, you know, that you've got a good no daylight, etc. coming through, so that these butt up against. And the same thing with the butt joint here. Now, another thing about this is that John's drawing does not show frame 2 as having a butt joint in it. But this piece of wood, if you cut this thing, you know, on a plank somehow, you'd have to have like a 9 or 10 inch wide plank to be able to cut this with, and you'd lose a tremendous amount of scrap. And so I just decided I'm going to follow the suit with the frame 1, which has the gusset on there. I'm using 6 screws, 6 on each side, and like I say, it's going to be epoxy glued with the epoxy in the middle here. It's going to look pretty, you know, professional and good. But like I say, being very careful that you've got the baseline down here on this drawing, and I'm forever taking pieces of wood and put it on there just to make sure that I'm right dead on that baseline and that it's true, so that you've got a balanced frame. After I get this all glued up, you know, this gets glue on it as well. What I might do is, before I glue this, I'll put the spall on it. I'll glue these on first. Like I said, I have to take all the screws out. It's not a big deal to do that, but it gives you a little more flexibility. And after you've assembled it, it's fairly, you know, I'm pretty satisfied with the trueness of how this lines up with the knuckle joints and everything on here. The wood's already been beveled, so it's going to be a fairly good thing. I think the sequence of getting it all done, like I say, I've only beveled it very shallow, leaving what I consider to be more wood than I need, hopefully, when it comes time to putting the battens on there and checking it out when the frames are mounted to the bottom. But it's a little ways off yet. I wasn't sure exactly how much time stuff would take, and of course I'm not able to spend full time on this, but I'm putting probably 20 to 30 hours a week into this as best I can. But a lot of it, the 20 and 30 hours a week, includes reviewing videos, making jigs and fixtures, sort of doing a lot of odds and ends. Like, for example, just this morning I took these braces here and I put a 1/4 round over bit on my router and routed the edges of these things just to make it smooth, because once you put these things together, it's kind of hard to do a good job of doing that, so I'd rather do it on the router table. And I'm still a little bit concerned about these edges here. I'm going to have to do something. I'm probably just going to sand a rounded edge on these things, but effectively leaving, you have to leave them to a certain extent, because the thwart plank or brace that goes along the boat on the inside that the seats, the thwarts sit on, actually will attach right about here to the insides of the frame. And so like I say, there's a lot of other parts that you have to be conscious of when you're doing all of this to make sure you're not interfering with anything that's going on in the boat. I even took some liberties with the design of the stem on the base part of it. It looked like he has it like 8 inches long from the edge of the bottom to, you know, and it gives you some time. It's about 8 inches to put some secured screws on there. I moved it out to 11 inches, and I thickened it up a little bit there. Just, you know, I'm always leaning on the side of a little bit more beef. You know, it's probably going to add a little bit of weight to the boat, but not a lot. So hopefully I'm not interfering with anything that's going to make the boat seaworthy. But one of the other things I'm doing here, I found out that, you know, even using some of the braces, I use regular, you know, hardware store screws, etc., that aren't going to be, you know, for temporary stuff. And a long time ago, when I was building our deck, I built it out of Ipe, and it was very, very hard wood. And the screws, driving them in, of course, even pre-drilling them with a tapered bit, they just overheated and broke the heads off. So the hardware store had given me this with the eBay order, which is very generous. I mean, the eBay lumber cost was about $3,000 or $4,000, but this is, I think, $20. It's a waxy paste, but it's it's very thin, kind of a creamy texture. And you can see here, I'll just dip the tips of the screws in it before I drive them in. And anything you can do like that, because, you know, breaking off, I broke one of the heads off of one of these screws on one of the frame ones, and I had to actually just leave it where it was. I actually was able to pull it out, but I had this hole there that I couldn't do much with. So I made another hole, you know, so you can see I've got 7 plugs instead of 6. But since I've started using the wax, I haven't had any further problems with it, with either the hardware store screws or whatever. I mean, I'm sure that if I rubbed it up with paste wax a little bit, it would do the same, but this is kind of convenient for me. I like it. And of course I have to keep this little shop of mine heated. I couldn't put my assembly together in the garage, because heating that is a very expensive affair, because it's 12-foot ceilings, and, you know, it's like 30 by 24 garage, so it's pretty hard to heat with these little heaters. But the shop here, I get it so that the purpose of keeping it warm in here is to use the epoxy. And I'm using, for most of the gussets and that kind of stuff, I'm using this T80 System 3, you know, Part A and B resin, and it's a marine epoxy. And this, I've bought these things to start with, and I've done a lot of gluing up of gussets already, and I'm still less than, I got about 2/3 of the jar left in here for that. And the other thing I've done to kind of help it out a little bit, I got into the shop vac, and I got out some sawdust, and I ran it through one of my wife's flour sifters to get all the junk out of it. And I'll mix some of this in with the epoxy to kind of try to give it as much of a woody look as I can. I'm still thinking about the sequence of how I've got to treat the wood in terms of getting it ready for finishing when the boat's done, and I'm trying to think ahead about that. And like these, I'm thinking about staining the oak, and I might do that before I even assemble the boat. But one of the things I want to do is, the other thing I found at the System 3 website, they have they're marketing through some outfit in Phoenix a boron-based material, borate-based material that is a wood preservative. They say that you spray it on the wood and let it soak in, mix it with water, and this stuff apparently, according to the books, it's a very, very non-toxic material. I mean, they've got an MSDS sheet, material safety data sheet, with it that, you look at it, you can almost drink this stuff, and it's, I mean, they don't recommend it, but it's not going to kill you. It's not even going to make you sick, more than likely. But anyhow, it'll penetrate over time. It just keeps penetrating deeper and deeper into the wood substrates, and it'll help prevent rot. And I don't know to what extent, but I'm going to give it a shot and do. Mostly, I'm worried about the bottom boards and the planking on the sides, because that's basically Douglas fir, and that's one of the most rot-prone woods there is. So I'm definitely going to do that, and might as well do the rest of it too. It's not a big deal, and it's not like you have to soak it and ruin the wood by getting it overly wet. I mean, you do a light spray of it and wipe it down and let it dry, and that's all you're going to need to do. And then I'll do that before I stain. But even the Douglas fir, I'm going to put a hardener on that after I do. I'm not going to necessarily stain that, but after I treat it with the rot material, I'm going to put a hardener on it, an epoxy, a two-part hardener, and and then. I'm thinking about using regular spar, a good quality spar varnish on the hull, on the inside and the outside. But again, I'm thinking about staining. And one of the other things I'm thinking of is the people at Minwax have got a series of color stains out, and I did our handrails with cedar out here on our deck. Baluster rails with a clear cedar, and I did a really deep forest green stain on it, and it brings the wood grain through, and that's what I want to do. So I'm thinking about having the shear strake be the only one that's green. It'll be an oak gunnel on top, and then the rest of the planks going down the sides will be a natural color, and with a kind of an oak interior. So I'm thinking this as I go, but that just gives you a little bit of an update on what's happening at the moment. And I'm hoping that at least by the end of April, that I'm in the garage. I've already ripped the bottom boards. I got one center 8-inch board and two 7-inch outer boards. The actual widest part of the bottom boards is 21 inches. So I've got plenty of wood there, and I'm going to have enough wood left over to where I can make some really nice battens too. That are good quality battens to play with there. But I expect that putting the planking on, before I even start putting the planking on, I'm probably going to spend 2 or 3 weeks trimming up the frames after I've mounted them to the bottoms, and for the bevels, going around with battens to check the bevels and making sure that I've got the right bevel edges on these. I haven't even started thinking about beveling the stems yet, and I'm still mystified about how I want to get the battens on them before I actually see what needs to be done, and it's probably